It was. Hey, no, let's start this. Let's start this ship. It's the Sustainiacs. Welcome to the show. It is the Sustainiacs, the sustainable Mr. Stanton. Um, I don't know. Maybe it's like it's a
It's like
play on
the
the incredible Mr. Limpet.
indomitable, right? Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I bet, which Emma probably doesn't remember that movie either, but you do too because you're
Mm,
old, like me.
yeah.
Or the Amazing Mr. Limpet or something like that. I don't know. George
Yeah.
Abernathy would correct us if he was watching here. Anyways, Don Knotts was a. It doesn't matter. Mister Mister Supply Chain is here. Emma, she's Emma Whiteman. I'm Mike Vincent. I don't know what the hell's going on. Emma, just talk to him, and I'll record it.
Yeah, we're here today. You know me, Emma. We're here today. Mr. Supply Chain, we're excited to have him on. We just spent for context for anyone listening, we just spent the last 15 minutes talking about things that I do not know about and I do not remember. So it's been fun for these two.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it just makes you feel old. But Mister Supply Chain is a friend of mine. We met on a day when I got in trouble because I revealed to him our 3D maps, and I wasn't supposed to let you take a picture of it and put it on LinkedIn, but you did, and I got called about an hour afterwards and yelled at, but it was all
You're
good.
welcome.
It was all good.
You're welcome.
I think we were at CSCMP out in I think it wasn't San Diego. It was Anaheim, I think, or somewhere out there, somewhere out west. But it doesn't matter. But you are an author and a professor and all things supply chain, and I've been in supply chain for 34 years, and now I'm doing this stuff here as well with sustainability, and obviously sustainability in the supply chain is a huge thing. Are we allowed to talk about your books, Daniel?
I think we're required to talk about my books, Michael.
I see that shirt you have on. I don't have a supply chain for dummies shirt still. I'm just saying.
Oh man, my marketing department is just sucking these days.
So, Mr. Supply Chain, are we allowed to talk about the next book that's coming out?
We sure can. We sure can. Yeah, no.
Cool. So you've got you've got one coming up, and one of the big things inside of it you're talking about. You got a big section on on sustainability and supply chain, and that's why we're talking today. Is really big bringing this in there, and I want to talk about it because a lot of people think and they focus on just like emissions, and emissions is it. It's just emissions, and that's it. And if we all go to electric, it'll be fine. It's a ton more complicated than that, is it not, Daniel?
It totally is. It totally is. And you know what I love about having this conversation with you guys is you get this, that like sustainability and supply chain aren't different topics, right? They are 100% linked, embedded, like any, issues that we have around human and industrial impacts on the planet are the result of supply chains, and anything
Right.
that we're going to do to reduce or improve that impact is going to happen through supply chains. And so, in order to be effective in trying to reduce climate change and improve sustainability, we've got to figure out, like, how do we make that make sense in and execute it, bring it forward through supply chains. So as you mentioned, I am the proud author of Supply Chain Management for Dummies.
Right on.
The best-selling book in the world about supply chain for several years running.
Continue. I'll be right back.
Take that for what you will as a data point about society today. But we are now there you go. So that's the second edition with the cargo ship on the cover. And strategically,
I have to point out to everybody, it's not signed.
Again, my marketing department, right? We got to get on those folks. But one of the things that I love about having that book, first of all, it's hard for me to believe that there was no Supply Chain Management for Dummies 5 or 6 years ago before Wiley asked me to do it. Like, how could nobody have done that yet? And so I was happy to write it. And basically what I did is took course notes from university classes that I'd been teaching
Well, I said it was unbelievable that you were able to make course notes readable and entertaining. And you said it's funny because I was drunk at the time.
How did you know? Third company. I'm going to do three because of where Emma's at.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. All right. So three companies that are examples of stuff that I think is just, radical improvements from a sustainability perspective that have everything to do with supply chain. So the first one is natural fiber welding, right? Which makes a material that looks and acts like leather, except there are no cows, there are no chemicals involved. There's essentially no emission of carbon dioxide. What they do is they grow plants. They put those plants through some combination of blenders and panini presses, and they turn them into a material that looks and acts like leather. The material, the company's based in Peoria, Illinois, right, in the middle of a bunch of cornfields, and so they're surrounded by their raw materials. And when the material reaches the end of its life, you just grind it up, and you can use it to recycle and make more of the same stuff, or you can drop it in the ground. It's fine because it's all.
Awesome. And you've got one of these. And you've got one of these. You got test
and here's my natural fiber welding wallet
awesome.
made by Belroy, which I've had for going on 6 months now, and it looks like it's brand new.
Amazing.
So does it come in like teriyaki flavor and hot flavor and natural like Beyond Meat jerky does? Or
you laugh. I've got Beyond Meat jerky in my house because of you, Jerky Boy. That's my new nickname for you. You've been pitching that stuff so hard, I had to get some, and it is delicious. But I'll sit down and I will eat a whole bag of it, and so it's not helping at all with my my weight loss goals.
My promotion of that stuff is now come back to bite me right in the ass because my 8-year-old will come home from the store with her mom and my beautiful wife, Melissa, and she'll have a bag of teriyaki and they didn't get any for me.
Right.
And she won't let me have any, and she will not let me have any. I'm like, okay.
It is good stuff. It goes down way too easy, and it is not cheap. And so I did not need another expensive addiction,
it isn't,
Michael Vincent.
But as far as a good one, and let's get to your second and third one, but real quick on that Beyond Meat jerky, what I love about the fact is that they've actually mimicked jerky, right? There's pieces in there that will make your jaw hurt, and you need to tear it. It's got the right consistency and everything. Yeah, it's really good.
They nailed it.
Really good.
All right,
who's your number two, man?
Second one, company called Simply Fiber. Out of I think they're based up in New York. They make cotton like soft woven materials, but instead of weaving it, they're able to mold cotton like materials. And if you think about the supply chain for cotton, right? You grow the stuff in Texas, you ship it to Asia, you do all the processing, turn it, and with Simply Fiber, they just eliminate whatever huge percentage of all of that. You grow the material, they've got some process that they run it through, and then they mold it into the shape that you want. And you've got, so,
it's actually cotton. It's actually cotton. Okay.
Yeah. And natural fibers. So my understanding is they're not limited to just cotton. But it's a totally different supply chain because of the manufacturing process. And because of that, like they equate it to being like 3D printing for clothes. And it's not that you're actually 3D printing it, but it is similar to 3D printing in the sense that you can do mass customization, right? You can make each product to the unique needs of that particular customer. And you can decentralize the manufacturing, right? And so the problem is nobody knows the answer, right? I mean,
right.
You can guess, and you can be really confident in your guess, and you can say it in a way that would make people think that you know what the future is going to be, and maybe they're more likely to believe you. But the truth is we don't know. I mean, there's just so many moving pieces and so many variables that, and by the way, this to me is where sustainability and resilience really start to overlap.
Sure.
Is you say, well, if there are if there's that much uncertainty, if we don't know what the future is going to be, we need to understand what the possible scenarios are and sort of prepare for lots of different potential futures.
So when you say we and prepare, like, I guess that brings me to a point where I'm like, where do you see the, I guess, the burden of sustainability? Is it more on the consumer? Is it more on the producer? Like, where do you see the balance between, I guess, those two parties? Is it more on supply chain people to be like, okay, we need to figure out how to do this? Or is it more on the consumer to say, I'm only going to support these places that are being sustainable? Or is it some combination of the two?
Yeah. Emma, I don't know if it's exactly the question you're asking, but I'll tell you the question that I will answer. How's that?
Okay. Yeah.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection.
So, what drives us to make better decisions and design our supply chains and implement supply chains in ways that are more sustainable. And the truth is, if you think about the people that have to make the decisions running supply chains, when they make a change, there are only a couple of ways to justify making a change. And you have to be able to show how it's better for the business, right? Mm-hmm. We should do this because it will benefit the business. Well, what are the potential benefits, right? I could make a change because it's going to reduce our costs. I could make a change because it's going to increase our revenue. Some combination of those could be making a change because it's going to increase our profitability. I could make a change because I want to avoid a cost in the future. For example, change something now so that I don't have to pay a penalty when the government comes and cracks down on me in a couple of years, right? Or change
EPR legislation.
Right. Or change something now so that my business doesn't become obsolete when something changes in a couple of years. Right. So, but at the end of the day, you've got to think about, well, whatever change we want to see happen, or we, or maybe a different way of saying it is if you want to try to predict which changes actually will happen, go back and look at how it would benefit the companies involved. So I think we are seeing in some industries where there is pressure from customers and pressure from shareholders that creates an environment where companies see a benefit to making changes. Right?
Yeah. Okay. So Daniel, to follow up from Emma's question, maybe I can answer a different way to force you to answer this.
I won't answer your question either, but I'll tell you which question I'll answer after your question.
Okay, so let me ask it this way. Don't you think that the pressures from the millennials are having an impact on what those benefits and what those the outcomes and positive impacts of making those changes will be? I mean, because profitability is tied to sales, and it's already, the studies are there that, a millennial, 80+% of them will buy something else if it's sustainable versus what you're doing, right? And that's bleeding over into even me, Gen X, and into baby boomers, because it's almost 70% there now because we're being convinced. Is that not a pressure that will hit it, or is it purely going to stay in the, the shareholders are happy with profits, and if I become sustainable, then my shareholders are happy? Is it still just the dollar in that sense, or is it convincing them that, hey, we got to do this and suck it up a little bit because it's the right thing to do, and this is the way society's going, and we really should do this? I see your answer. I got it. I mean, he's shaking his head.
I wish it weren't true.
I got it. All right. That's a good enough answer for me. That's a good enough answer for me.
At the end of the day, companies have to do what's in a company's best interest. And
isn't it like the planet is still here? Isn't that their interest? I mean,
but the planet doesn't read the quarterly report.
No, it doesn't.
The the company doesn't read the court, like the company doesn't care about the planet. Maybe the people do, but the company itself as an entity does not.
And I absolutely don't want this to be misunderstood to say that I don't think it's important and that I
No,
don't
I
think
understand
it should
that.
be
No,
a
I get
priority.
it. Yeah.
But I think the reality, I mean, if you look at the way businesses operate,
Yeah.
a business is a machine for generating money, right? It creates value. And so I think that the challenge is that we as citizens, participants in national and global governance, need to make rules wherein companies can make money but are required to do it in a way that they're not creating social costs that they don't have to pay for.
Yeah,
right.
EPR,
Yeah,
or some
good
sort
idea.
or some sort of a form of it in the right way. And those are really slippery slope as well. As England's trying to figure out their supply chains for food, etc. And should they have so much of their land committed to supporting the cattle industry, because that's their big issue over there right now, and how to correct that without saying, hey, we're now all officially vegan, or otherwise you go to jail is it's a difficult thing to stay away from, right?
Like I agree what Michael's saying, but I almost feel like the question isn't, is greenwashing good or bad? I think the question is more of like, is doing anything, even if it's not well thought out? Is that what you meant, Michael? Or
No, yeah. What kind of? I mean, the legality.
Wait. In like one sentence, it was yeah, no, yeah.
Well, because it's a hard question. It's a really hard question, and I'm trying to ask because it involves so many different parts. One is this. I guess there's a two-part question. One, should companies like Thomas be like Hyliion? Well, I believe yes, should be going down these roads and trying to experiment and move things forward. I think pivoting and doing the right thing is the right thing to do, and he calls it, it's well to wheel. And that's what we need to do and figure this out. He said they're a sustainability company that happens to focus on the electrification of the powertrain for Class 8 vehicles. That's how he pronounced. They're not a Class 8 vehicle or a powertrain. They're a sustainability company. And so I get it. And that's awesome. All right. So making mistakes and pivoting as you move should be allowable and something we applaud, because that's how we move forward. That's one. Do you agree with that? Two, does do greenwashing legal suits go too far and prevent people from taking those risks until there's EPR or some type of legislation that forces them to have to take that risk?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's a good way to say it.
I hope I recorded that, because I'll never say it that clearly again, I swear.
Yeah. My lawyer has advised me that I am not to comment on any current, past, or future litigation related to greenwashing. However,
okay, is that true?
No.
Okay,
it's complete BS. But it sounded good, didn't it?
I would have accepted it and moved on, to tell you the truth. But
yeah. Note to self: next time Michael asks a hard question.
Michael, note to self: Michael's very gullible.
No, pull that lawyer card next time. Yeah, I mean, greenwashing is bad, right? But doing something is better than doing nothing. And so the question is, how do you do something, take credit for being better than you could have been, be honest about, it's imperfect, and make genuine, authentic efforts at continuing to get better, right? Sort of that continuous improvement mindset. And back to where we were earlier in the conversation, there are so many different technologies and business models and geopolitical forces at play at the same time that it just feels like it is impossible to, pick the winners and predict the future with a whole lot of accuracy.
Yeah.
And so, sadly, you got to believe there are a lot of really brilliant, innovative ideas that are coming out that are going to end up not being relevant or not being commercially viable because of nothing having to do with the founders, just that the world around us is changing faster than those innovations are able to make it into the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because right at the end of the day, we're innovating for the problems of today, but a lot of those innovations won't actually be available until the future, and the world will be different. I'll tell you, totally off topic. I'm going to take it a different direction, but one of the technologies I was reading about last week, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's some folks who've developed wind generators specifically designed to sit on the tops of warehouses, right? As a complement to solar. No external moving parts. It's just this big box that you sit along the edges of a warehouse, and it if you think about the way an airplane wing accelerates the air going over the top, and that's how you get lift, they use that same principle to accelerate the velocity of air from wind, and then use that to generate electricity on site, right? This distributed power.
Amazing.
And so it's not that replaces solar, but if you put that into the mix with solar, maybe now we don't need so much lithium for batteries, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Every one of these pieces starts moving it around. And the more I've looked at that technology that was developed and I wish I could Windmine or something like that. I should know the right name of the company, but they're working with Sandia Labs and one of the universities in Texas. And when you actually look at what they have, you're like, I could build that out of Legos. I mean, if it really works.
It's the simplicity of it. Yeah. Sometimes the new technology is going back to rock and chisel, right?
And so, deployment or diffusion of that technology is really only constrained by our manufacturing capacity, right? So, back to your quasi question about greenwashing, because there was so much stuff in there. Yes, greenwashing is bad, right? Companies,
Yes.
But for me, greenwashing is when you have real issues and you sort of sweep those under the rug and you're not transparent about that, and then you or you take the real issues and you hide them in your supply chain partners, like, well, we don't do that, but there's a third party that we contract with that does all of that for us. So it's just off of our books. That to me is, classic greenwashing in supply chains. So we need to be transparent. How do you force companies to be transparent? How do you make it in their interest for them to be transparent? I mean, I don't know how you do that without it, either being shareholders demand it, customers demand it, to your point, right? You want to do business with me, you gotta be honest with where stuff comes from, or the government requires it, right? And it's regulation. And if I'm in charge of a company and my focus is making money, I don't like any of those three, but if I'm forced to comply with them to keep my job, guess what? That's how we get some of this stuff done.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair enough answer. I mean, I get it. I mean, the thing I do not like is the frivolous lawsuits that are there just to prove a point and pick on somebody who was trying to do something and didn't really. There was no malicious intent inside that. But I guess sometimes you got to have those lawsuits to figure that out, right? If
anybody can sue anybody for anything.
Yeah, that doesn't make it right, though. Right, but you're right. Yeah, they can. You can be litigious as hell with this with stuff. I mean, there's so many different things.
By the way, if I don't like the way you guys edit this podcast, you'll be hearing from my attorney.
That one.
Just keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind.
I know it. No. Listen. That's exactly right. I mean, it is, and there are companies that don't care, and there's some that I send it to, and then they say, "Okay, it's good to publish," right? So, yeah, because I mean, our goal is not to catch somebody and grab a soundbite and make them look like idiots or anything like that. Yeah. You just make it easy.
I'm kidding. Yeah.
Oh man. So let's talk about some of this a little bit more. We've got a little bit more time. We've got a lot of stuff in the bank, but this has been really awesome. Circular economy, plastics for one, right? You want to talk a little bit about circular economy and the fact that, when you start looking at it, everything is inventory. So for example, plastics, Primex plastics right here, they're all over the country. They got 152 different plants around the country, but there's one not 11 miles from where I am sitting right here, right? They move 250 million pounds of recycled plastic a year is what they utilize into their stream, into their products. And that is demanded by themselves. They're a private company, so they don't have to answer to shareholders. But it's demanded by themselves and from their customers. They're getting much more and more pressure from their customers to have this certified material within their products. Now, whether that's current legislation, because some of the states have that, or fear of new legislation, but what it's doing is pushing them to source plastic from different places and causing it to come from shorter and shorter distances. Like right now, it's like 350 miles or something like that for a piece of plastic that moves before it's actually recycled, if it actually gets recycled, right? But now that they have to have these, it's causing all these other innovations within the supply chain that is changing even the garbage hauling and that whole supply chain. Because even CEO of P&G last December came out and said, we're not going to make any of our ESG goals because I can't find enough recycled plastics to get it there, right? So that type of innovation brings down those costs and makes it more economically viable for companies to then be green. Right now, the AB InBevs of the world and those that are buying the EVs and the hydrogen and all those kind of things, they're definitely making an investment in the future. But those people that are doing that are the ones that are going to eventually help us bring down the cost so that it actually does have a positive impact and everybody adopts it, right?
I'm going to take a step back and say, we all use a lot of plastic and we love plastic because it's cheap and it's versatile, right? There's a lot of stuff we can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
But plastics as we know it today didn't exist 100 years ago.
No, they did not.
Mm-mm. Plastics as we know them today are the result of a huge investment in research and development, in different ways of processing and manipulating petroleum-based, really in many cases, byproducts, right? Mm-hmm. What was left over after we refined out fuels. So we had a bunch of the stuff that was left over. We did a bunch of research on how to use it, and we now have a huge global, extremely sophisticated industry for making plastics. Mm-hmm. The source material for that industry for large part is petroleum that comes out of the ground. And there's a lot of debate about how much there is, but I think most of us agree there is a finite amount of petroleum in the earth. Think.
I'll be shocked if there isn't.
Right? There are a growing number of people on the planet. We just hit the 8 billion mark. And so at some point you say, well, there's a finite amount of this stuff and there are more people using it and wanting more of it. At some point that math doesn't work, right? Mm-hmm. And from a sustainability perspective, like, I think it is great to take the plastics that we've already made and not put them into landfills or let them wash into the ocean and kill fish or get into our bloodstream. By the way, another company I'll make a plug for, there's a company called Million Marker that exists to test your blood and tell you how much plastic you have in your body, among other things.
Wow.
So it is keeping used plastic out of the environment good? Yes. overall, though, it just makes a lot more sense to me that we would look for alternatives. Do
Oh
things
yeah,
exactly
absolutely.
like what natural fiber welding has done to say, rather
Yeah,
than making something bad, less and clearly not sustainable over whatever period of time, rather than just trying to make that a little less bad, how do we come up with an alternative that is not bad and that
agreed.
scale that?
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. In the meantime, trying to collect and find something to do with and reutilize the plastics that's already there
Guitar
pretty
picks.
important.
Everybody in the world needs to learn how to play guitar and buy picks.
I'll tell you, if every guitar player, according to the statistics, bought one pack, we would take 32 million pounds of plastics out of the ocean.
I love it. Make that happen.
I don't
And
think it's going to happen.
and how
But
many
we'll see.
tortoises would we save in the process?
I don't know. I don't
Probably
know. That's
so many.
probably a ton of them.
Right.
But yeah, there's so many different things. There's so many different nascent technologies that are being done right now that the supply chain of just the plastics we could get into forever, Daniel, and have a huge conversation about it, because you have all these, so they're University of in Singapore and some others making hydrogen out of plastics. Their process makes hydrogen and carbon nanotubes.
Yep.
Pretty nice, except they have to have a way of getting all the plastic clean and separated in order to make that happen, right? And that's where the supply chain of even just those plastics just falls down and breaks apart. It's not the people at the one end looking at all these really cool ways of doing it, like putting these interesting wing or foil type boxes on top of warehouses to improve solar power, right? You've got to build that, but then you've got to find the breeze to enhance, right? And when you start looking at some of these other things, because you've got people like WestRock that run these MRFs, the big material reclamation facilities, but they're doing it to get the paper and the cardboard, right? The ancillary is the plastic. And that's why, and it's not their fault. It's the logistics are set up so that it's wish cycling and not actually recycling. Very little actually gets done.
So two things I'll mention, and both of these are things I talk about in a lot of detail in the book. So, when you say supply chain, what do you mean? And there are lots of different ways of explaining what a
Yes.
supply chain is. But one of the simplest explanation is it's really made up of three flows, right? Which is very good for a sustainability conversation. So one of the flows in a supply chain is the flow of materials, right? And materials flow starting at the earth, right? From mines and forests and oceans.
Sure.
They flow down the supply chain towards a consumer. Then there's a second flow, which is the flow of money. And money flows from a consumer all the way back up the supply chain to whoever extracted those raw materials from the earth.
Yeah.
And then the third flow is the flow of information, right? And information flows both ways in the supply chain. But when you really think about it, while there may be lots and lots of layers or tiers in a supply chain, there is only one party injecting every dollar that goes into that supply chain. And that is the consumer, right?
Yes.
And then that dollar gets divided up by all of the parties upstream in that material flow, and they're all fighting to maximize their profit and to get their share. Then the other part is when you start talking about the reclamation and, what happens to the stuff at the end of its life. Well, you're really asking the question, who pays the bill for the stuff when the consumer is done with it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a cost that the consumer pays in addition to the money that they paid, that got divided up in the supply chain? Is that a cost that then has to go back to one of those parties in the supply chain, in which case they needed to get paid for it, right? The first time through, because now they got to deal with the problem in the future. Or is that an externality? Is that a cost that everybody else has to pay that isn't borne by the consumer or any of the parties in the supply chain? And if that's the case, is that the way we want it to be, or do we want to change that?
That's a good point.
I would suggest this, Professor. I would suggest that it is another ground from which the raw materials begin to flow towards the consumer. Post-consumer is nothing more than another mine. It's another forest, if we look at it the right way, and it's just another flow that then starts all over together. It's not necessarily circular. It is, if you look at it that way, but it is more that. I mean, you even have there are investors that I know 100% and are around probably around the world, but I know of one that has bought several properties already in Africa where they're buying the old landfills.
Sure.
Because there will be the mines of
those
the future.
Those are the mines of the future. Absolutely.
They're the mines of the future. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But
they come with their own problems. Exactly what you said.
No doubt about it. Yes, they do.
On the one hand, the material may be more pure. On the other hand, it may be contaminated. Right?
Yeah.
It needs to be separated. It needs to be right.
Yeah. There's a lot of old card batteries at the bottom of those landfills, dude. There's a lot of sludge pools from people like Diamond Shamrock that made Agent Orange and stuff like that that'll be uncovered if they start thinking it. I mean, we buried a bunch of ugly stuff, man, for a long, long time, right?
Now we're going to be paying for it.
Yeah, but you should save your money because what you need to do is buy the third edition. Picks? Well, yes, guitar picks, but if you buy a third edition Supply Chain Management for Dummies, Daniel will send you free guitar picks with it. But no, just kidding.
You do a co-branding thing. Talk to my marketing people.
Your marketing people are way behind the ball, man. They're so far.
By the way, I literally do have your T-shirt sitting here.
I'm sure you do.
I'll slow the pickup down and I'll throw the T-shirt out the window as I drive past Chattanooga.
You got to stop by and I'll trade you some What the Truck gear for it.
I love it.
That'll work. Dude, when is the book coming out, man? Are you allowed to say?
I would be allowed to say if I knew. I am.
See, again, marketing department is not keeping you up to speed on what is happening.
Let me down. I want to say right around time for the holidays. It is available for pre-order already on Amazon.
Okay, cool.
And the great thing about Amazon's got this deal that if you pre-order it, if the price drops anytime between now and when it gets released, they will honor that lowest price. So you can lock it in. So I think pre-ordering on Amazon is actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah, no, that's not bad at all. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, order them for Christmas, man. Get them in. How's the supply chain? Do I still have time to get them in?
I am for your friends. Yeah.
When's drop dead date in your supply chain to buy these and get them?
Get
it? Drop dead date to buy them and get them for the holiday?
Yeah, for Christmas. You know,
that's an Amazon question. But I mean, there's there's so much capacity right now. I mean, you could probably you could probably get a full truckload.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna order one on Amazon and see if it gets here by drone before the end of this show. It only takes an hour.
I love it.
Daniel, thank you so much for coming on, man. Where do people learn more from Mr. Supply Chain? And where do they sign up for your courses too, right? You got e-learning and all that kind of stuff on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Spread it everywhere, dude.
Right. So we got the book, but a ton of courses on LinkedIn Learning. And one of the really exciting things about the LinkedIn Learning courses is they're available in a bunch of languages. So you can take those courses in Spanish or Portuguese, and now some of them are like in Polish and Turkish. So
nice.
Totally Japanese, Chinese, very, very global. By the way, what's great about that for companies is if you've got a global team, they can all take the same course in a local language. So you're not learning different stuff. So you can get links to all of that on my website, danielstanton.com. And of course, follow me on LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter. You can listen to Michael and I abuse each other and on Twitter.
Not friendly ribbing.
Dad jokes and supply chain
Yes.
humor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yes. That's exactly right. And notice there's no Comedy Central for dad joke or logistics humor.
Right?
I mean, there's some really good people out there that can meme the hell out of it. That is for sure. But I'm not one of them.
That's right. Very, very nichey.
Yes, yes, yes. I love it. Hey, thank you so much, Daniel. And everybody, hey, if you reach us at the Sustainiacs just about everywhere. Just search the Sustainiacs or email the Sustainiacs at gmail.com with any questions or concerns or anything like that, or suggestions. Or if you've got a company and you want to come in and talk about it and spread the word, that's what we want to do, is get companies, consumers, concerned citizens, everybody together so that we can all live sustainably together a lot easier than just being polarized and divided and deciding, well, they're evil because they make plastic, or they're evil because they drive trucks. And that's just not the case. Everybody's trying to make this happen. It's just a difficult thing to do. Emma, where are they reaching out to you?
Emma_Sustainiacs on Instagram. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, and if, like Michael said, even if it's not your company, not your organization, if you have a company or org you really, really love, send them our way. We rarely will turn people down unless they aren't quite what they say they are. So definitely let us know.
Yeah, I've got 4 I wrote down here that I'm going to be contacting, just that I picked up from Mr. Supply Chain, for sure.
Yep. Mr. Supply Chain sent us.
That's right. I'll let them know. Is that the code to get,
you say your name at checkout, we get like 15% off or something?
I get a free robot. I get a free robot, wallet, a shirt, and they'll test my blood for free if I say Mr. Supply Chain.
Boom.
Excellent stuff, everybody. Hey, peace and love. We'll catch you guys next time. So you're talking about 2 cool sustainable.
So 2 stories that really sort of drive sustainability home for me, and also tie back into supply chain. So the first one, I think I'm an old sailor. I was in the Navy for 5 years with an F-18 squadron, so I was out on aircraft carriers. And
hence the book beside you. Cool.
And actually, this is one of my boats. There's that CVN 74 that John C. sent us.
Oh, nice.
And I remember on that boat being out in the middle of the ocean, and if you can imagine, it turns out the Earth is a really big place, and when you're out on the ocean, you can see for a long, long way. And I remember standing up on the flight deck and seeing trails of debris going off into the horizon. If you can imagine, like 10-gallon cooking oil bottles and metal barrels and plastic wrap and just all kinds of crap. And these were the breadcrumbs. These were the trails left behind by other vessels, for the most part, cargo ships, right?
Yeah.
That just threw stuff overboard. And, if it were one ship doing that once a year on the scale of the planet, it wouldn't be a huge deal. But Michael, we look at marine traffic. There's a lot of boats out there.
There's a lot of damn boats. A lot of damn boats.
And so, when you start thinking about the scale and the impact of that, right, as supply chain people, we've got to own that. The second one, my wife she grew up in Bolivia.
Oh, wow. My oldest daughter, Isabel, just graduated from UCF. I adopted her from Santa Cruz in Bolivia.
Oh, no kidding. Okay. So my brother-in-law and his family are in Santa Cruz. But my wife grew up in La Paz, which is way up in the Andes Mountains. And
been there too.
And well, there you go. And one of my early trips down there, early in our marriage, my father-in-law and I went on this guy's trip to he was going to show me the highest ski resort in the world.
Wow.
Which was made by a bunch of physics nerds who were up at an observatory on this glacier in the Andes Mountains, within driving distance of La Paz. And so he takes me up to the highest ski resort in the world, and as you might imagine, it sort of looks like a clothesline with an old Chevy 350 engine to drive the thing.
Bolivia's not a very rich country,
right? But the thing that was missing was there wasn't any snow. The glacier that they had built this thing on, and that my father-in-law, when he was a young man, had gone up and was such a sort of quirky attraction. It's gone. That glacier it does not exist anymore. And so having those sorts of experiences, you just go, the climate is changing. We as human beings and as supply chains we can't deny the damage that we're doing to the planet. We have to take ownership of it, and we have to find ways of reducing the impact and turning it around, because the ones who are going to suffer, maybe us, will certainly be our kids and our grandkids. And so we have to figure out how to make it better and how to make it work.
We absolutely do. And so let me ask you this one last question on this Sustainiacs extra with Mr. Supply Chain, Daniel Stanton, is this. I did a little article today. It was based on a couple other articles. One was by University of Washington Supply Chain out west, PNW, the University of Washington. And they were talking about the ethics and sustainability of same and next day delivery, and some quotes by Jeff Bezos talking about how, a lot of ways the speed of delivery has reduced the carbon footprint, because now the shipments, et cetera, are coming from, staging areas or distributions that are closer to population centers. And I basically said, I've never read a more obvious line of BS in my entire life, because they weren't produced right there in those. They still had to move to those locations. There's zero reduction in carbon footprint by doing this. In fact, I contend that our desire for this convenience of getting this coffee mug today or tomorrow instead of waiting a week, which you can do, nobody has to have it today, is contributing hugely to the carbon footprint and emissions issues, and even causing the automation of warehouses, which are great and they're efficient, but they also make those warehouses less green. It's more green to have people working in a warehouse than it is automation, because you're not drawing on the energy as much. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I don't. For
it's
me,
an interesting conversation, right?
That's right. And by the way, those are the ones that I love to actually get into researching. Is where intelligent people would look at it and immediately come to contradictory conclusions.
Two different people will think totally different.
Two different smart supply chain people would look at the same problem, see it opposite ways, and that pulls us full circle to say what we really need to be able to do is be transparent about all of the inputs and all of the outputs, and do that accounting to figure out at the end of the day what's best for the planet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think it all comes down to those research, those studies and stuff, because I'm sitting here and I hear you say like, oh, it's more green, but I guess it depends on like what's your definition, because well, you got to do relying less on the electricity, but then you have people driving into work every day that are causing emissions with their cars. You have people who are, I don't know, wearing more clothing because they have to leave the house, more protective equipment that's being created. And I guess it just comes down to
you're right.
Definition of green.
You
can get into it.
Where do you draw the boundaries around the system? And what are you
Exactly.
going to measure?
Right.
Yeah, because agreed. Because one of the things is this: if you can order stuff and it gets delivered the next day or whatever, and it comes out, that's one more person not driving. No. That's one more delivery vehicle coming out today that could wait until the end of the week and take 10 deliveries out instead of coming out once.
But if you've got the density, why does it
If
matter
you-
whether it's
I
today
agree.
or 10 days?
It doesn't matter if you've got the density, and that's where the studies come in, at Daniel, right? And that's where you got to look at these things, because I'm just thinking in my neighborhood, there's no way in the next 2 hours that there's enough density to have somebody come out here and deliver me this coffee cup.
Move out of the boondocks, and then you can get your mug whenever you want it.